Hello there and welcome. So today we're going to look at road positioning in a bit more detail. Now some of you may have already seen my last video about road positioning, and it was aimed mainly at some of the more basics and considerations that we might want to look at for CBT, for example, or for test training, although it did touch on some other aspects that will last throughout your potential riding career. So when we look at CBT and test standard, I always view it as being slightly restrictive, but that's necessary because we can only teach someone to ride according to their ability, and we have to have a starting block of a bit of a baseline. You couldn't expect someone to start using some of the more intricate positions if they're new to riding and are still focusing on the basics of controlling the bike. And some motorcyclists that are not road users that are looking to get their first full licence, or youngsters who are on a completely provisional licence, there is so much to learn. And that's why things change post-CBT, post-test. If we give you too much information to think about, you're going to be in a situation of overload. But what concerns me sometimes is that newer motorcyclists may be looking at some of this stuff on the internet, and that includes the stuff that I publish as well. And then you go and look at something else, and very often you'll get a complete conflict in opinion or telling you what you should and shouldn't do, and it must be very, very confusing. And I know that if I was a new motorcyclist looking at some of this stuff, I'd be completely disheartened sometimes. I just turn it off and I think, well, I don't know what to believe. So very often instructors use a series of numbers to try and assist students in position correctly on the road. They are sometimes 1 to 3 or 1 to 5. I know that one of my viewers has commented that numbers 1 to 5 are no longer used in the training industry because there is a risk of a motorcyclist being too far to the left or too far to the right, and so that we now refer to positions 1 to 3. And roadcraft does in fact refer to the near side, the central and the offside position. It's just a little word of caution really that, you know, some instructors may still use 1 to 5, some may use 1 to 3. I know that by using position 1, which is a pretty close tight fit on the left hand side into the curb, you need to be aware that there are risks in positioning yourself there. Now there are some occasions where that may be necessary to get yourself as tight to the left as is possible. For example, a single track blind tight bend on the left hand, where you're not sure that something might come around the corner, in which case your speed will be very, very low. Certainly at high speeds you do not want to be tucking yourself tight into the left verge because of the camber, the risk of gravel and the risk of actually coming off the road. And as I discuss later on in my video, we talk about offsiding, you know, crossing the white line. When we talk about position 5, I mean, I'm virtually in position 5, what would be considered position 5 now. You have to be very mindful that if you do position quite close to the white line, it needs to be extremely safe and relevant. So it's possibly why some instructors and the industry as a whole may not advocate positions 1 to 5 anymore. It's just something to be aware of. You may in the training world encounter both schemes. The bottom line is, wherever you position on your bike, it has to be safe. Roadcraft doesn't give you numbers on the road. What roadcraft gives you is some guidance as to 3 positions. So it will say that there is the near side position, the central position and the offside position. And it goes on to say how those positions may benefit you in certain circumstances, but you also need to be aware of certain issues. So when you go on to look at the actual chapter on bends, roadcraft yet again advises for left-hand bends, position towards the centre line. For right-hand bends, position towards the left. But it also goes on to give you extra information as to other hazards and considerations that you would need. And this is the whole point, I believe, of post-test advanced, if you wish, or enhanced additional training. We need thinking riders. We need riders that assess the road, read the road, and position their motorcycle in the correct place according to the hazards present at that time. Observation is everything. If we think about our system, IPSCA, the information phase, take, use and give. Take that information. So we're not blindly following a routine of positioning in a default position. We are positioning, bearing in mind, safety and advantage. And we never compromise our safety for any other advantage. I think what I'm trying to get over here, if you haven't realised already, is that each individual situation is unique. Even if it's the same bend and you're going to do it 3 times on the same day, it needs to be looked at with fresh eyes. And it needs to be thought about in a very independent way. What is going on now at this exact moment in time, and what could happen in the next couple of seconds? So one question we get a lot is, how far out do I need to position on a left-hand bend? And what is the advantage of positioning to the right to get an early view? And we know that roadcraft talks a lot about getting a view, a vision. And that's because vision, information, gives you so much more choice and safety if you're getting the information in correctly. So we're going to have a look at this left-hand bend here, and let's look at the difference we get in position from 1 to 5. So we'll start off using position 3, if you like, or the central of our lane position. So I can certainly stop in the distance I can see to be clear at this speed using position 3 all around the bend. It's a fairly neutral position. There are very little in the way of hazards to the near side, except for this junction which I'm approaching now. We'll have a look at this bend as well. We'll might as well do 2 of them. I'm kept well away from oncoming traffic, although there is central markings there with a constant solid white line system in force, and the road surface is in fair repair right the way across. So consideration wise, it's pretty neutral all round, isn't it? Right, let's look at it from a different perspective. So let's look at this bend now, and I'm going to use a near side position, and I'm going to go a little bit further to the left than normal. I wouldn't normally ride like this on this particular road. It's just experimental. So the road's nice and clear, speed limit's 40 still. So we're going to ride what you might want to call position 1 or 2, near side. I'm probably nearer position 1 at the moment, to be honest. So in all fairness, is that making a massive difference to my visibility of the road ahead? It's going to make a big difference for my personal safety by this junction. So I'm going to go a little bit slower. There's no one behind me, I'm not affecting anyone. And actually, did it help from the offside junction being over here? Well, actually, it could well have done. It could have given me an advantage in that particular case. But of course, we've got to be careful that we don't mislead other road users. So this time then, let's do the bend from an offside position, or a position 4, or a position 5. Let's get to position 5, shall we? Let's see how this changes things. So, earlier view around the bend possibly. Is it necessary? Do I actually achieve anything with it? Put me a bit closer to the junctions there on the right, but I can see they're clear. Vehicle waiting there at that junction again. Can he see me? It's given me a better safety margin from the junction on the left, which is hidden by the bushes. It's put me slightly closer to oncoming traffic. Wouldn't say dangerously so though, because of the width of the road and the central markings. And I can see the vehicles, and I can see that they appear to be fairly stable. So, a few considerations there. Did it make a massive difference? Which position really made a big difference? And in that situation, it probably wasn't overly critical. So if you've just finished your test training, you may be quite stuck in position 3 or a central position within your lane. But we do have to start looking at wider issues now you're becoming more competent on a motorcycle. So if I have no hazards to my near side, I could even come a little bit more near side away from oncoming traffic. What if a vehicle were to come out of a drive there? The first thing the oncoming car is going to do is swerve out the way into my path. If I position more to the near side, I've got a bigger safety margin. but I can't do it blindly, because if I'm approaching a junction which is blind, that also gives a high risk to me, and it may be more high risk than a vehicle possibly swerving out in front of me. Now this brings a situation in here, straight lining bends, in much the same way we would straight line a roundabout. So why can an advanced rider do it and a test rider can't? It goes back to what I said earlier. You've got a lot to think about. You've got to have very high levels of observation and anticipation to start taking advantages such as straight lining bends and roundabouts. In addition, it's very difficult for an examiner in about 35-40 minutes of riding, if you start doing that, to think, are you incapable of going round the bend and roundabout, or are you actually doing a really polished advanced ride which is way beyond what I expect at test standard? And there may not be enough situations in that test slot to prove it one way or the other, unless of course you make an absolute mistake of it and get it horribly wrong, in which case it's a fail. So it's like a foundation process, isn't it? You know, you build a good foundation of basics and then you build on it. So when I've heard advanced trainers say to people, forget everything you learned in test training, no, do not forget everything you've learned in test training. Remember it, it was taught you for a very good reason, but build on it and adapt it. One of the fundamental differences that we will see for using roundabouts, advanced versus test training, is what we call straight lining of the roundabout. And any of you that have straight lined a roundabout on your test know that you probably failed. And that's because it's very easy in using two lanes on a roundabout to come into conflict with another road user, which of course we don't want. But when we've used plenty of good planning and observational skills, the ability to straight line a roundabout can be helpful. It's helpful because the bike can be more stable because it's upright. So if you're sort of fearing a slippery roundabout on a wet day, for example, that more upright position can be very useful indeed. But it's not a thing you can do lightly. You must make sure that all the traffic around you is not going to interfere with you and you're not going to interfere with them. So like here, I've made all the plans straight through the roundabout, still use a signal, still check the blind spot, but it's job done. The other thing, of course, with treating a roundabout in that way is you can carry more speed. The downsides of carrying more speed on a roundabout like that is that if the roads are busy and people are trying to join the roundabout, you need to give them a chance to join. It's only fair. So if you go steaming onto a roundabout, you're very likely to find that other road users pull out in front of you. And that's just a situation you've created by using too much speed for the hazard. This is why we say advanced techniques are all based on observation, good observation and planning. You can't just do something. You have to have a full understanding and an ability so that you don't create a further problem with the newfound skill. So here, for example, with the car on my offside, I certainly cannot. And you'll see there his lane discipline was shocking because he's actually cut me up on that roundabout quite nicely. It's the sort of thing you just mustn't do. Another reason as well why roundabouts shouldn't be dealt with at high speeds, because it leaves no margin for error at all. So if you think the white BMW there, he approached in lane 2, the offside lane, and halfway around the roundabout he's changed lane and come into the near side lane on the exit. That's why awareness and planning is useful. Now, had there been nobody there, if I wasn't there, that's a perfectly acceptable manoeuvre for that BMW to do. But it's not acceptable when there's other traffic. I remember some time ago, a student came to see me to do his enhanced rider scheme, and he'd spent some time with one of the advanced organisations, and he says, I'm really confused. I said, why's that? He said, they made me turn right from the left lane at a roundabout. I don't get it. Right, let's imagine that there's no one going to be affected. Can I turn right from the left lane? Yeah, I can. Why? Why? Because it gives me a quicker and easier line through the roundabout. Wouldn't do it as a default, But if we're trying to make rapid progression, and this is why emergency services riders may use it, you can. But yet again, as we've been saying right the way through the video, provided it doesn't compromise anyone's safety and confuse another road user or come into conflict with another road user. So if you look at the layout of this roundabout, we're going to take the first exit left. Got a vehicle in front to consider, no one behind. Now, do I have to follow perfect lane discipline? It's clear, right. All I'm going to do is I'm going to take the cleanest route right through that roundabout. So no, I haven't got to follow lane discipline. I come through the roundabout faster and more stable and more smoothly. So another question that comes up a lot in test training and post-test training is when we turn into a junction from a major road to a minor road, can we cut the corner? And those of you who have done your test training, some of you that may have failed your Module 2 test for cutting the corner, no, you can't do it. But when it comes to post-test training, you can, dependent on factors, and this is yet again vision. So I'm going to assume I'm going to turn into this junction as per test, and in fact that junction needed to be done that way because the view didn't open early enough. But if the view does open early enough and you can see it's clear and you're not going to affect another road user or confuse another road user behind you or put yourself at risk, take the smoothest, cleanest line you can achieve. It's the same as straight lining a roundabout, isn't it? Okay, so here we are. Do we need to do this as per test standard, or can we just cut the corner massively? Well, of course we can. Not affected another road user. It's the most direct line through. It just makes perfect sense. So another area that you might find slightly different from test training to advanced is the way you position at junctions. So you'll know that pretty much, certainly on CBT and pretty much in direct access, position to the left to turn left, don't leave a gap between yourself and the curb that a two-wheeler can get between, position to the white line to turn right, etc. You know it all, you've done it. When you get to advanced level, you get much more flexibility. We're looking at thinking about a lot more factors, so we're just not going to blindly default to those set positions. We're increasing the amount of positioning available to you, and the reason is, what we're saying is, look, you're more competent on the bike, you're more aware, you're developing your skills. So like, I'm going to turn left here in a moment. I'm pretty much in the middle of my lane. It's a very quiet rural junction actually. I know there's no one to my left, you know, I'm aware of the risk, I'm taking care of it, which means I can come further out, which means I can have an easier turn, if you like, which isn't going to send me out into the middle of the road. Having said that, the road's very narrow, I'll probably go pretty much in the middle anyway, but it's not going to send me wide. Same if I was turning right here, I'd probably be a little bit to the left and I angle slightly the bike to the right. Now, you're told not to do that in basic training because your rear end's sticking out and it might affect a vehicle coming up behind you. Now, I wouldn't do that if that was the case. I'm always going to balance my safety along with the inconvenience or the convenience of other road users plus any advantages. So the junction we're going to go to now, it's slightly offset. We're going to turn right and the junction's pointing towards the left. So I've seen someone go dead parallel to those white lines and then struggle to turn right. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to take a completely different approach to make my life easy. So I've already looked at the road surface and layout. If I follow that white line, that's a tight turn. So I'm going to come into the left and then I'm going to move the bike to the right. And we can see by doing that, I mean, there's a big enough room there for a car to go behind me if it was going to. The road's very quiet. You can see now it's very easy for me to complete the turn and get the view of the road ahead. So it's just constant adaptation to the circumstances and being aware of what's going on. So the flexibility you have is vast, isn't it? So once we've passed our test and we start looking at bends, we do get a lot more in the way of options as to where we position. So if we look through here, what view have I got? An excellent view. A little bit of dead ground with that tree, but if I come out, that'll soon clear itself. Adverse camber, straighten that bend out. If you're not affecting anyone else, if you're not breaking the law, if your observations are all good, have clean, smooth lines, use the road. I've got maximum safe space left and right at the moment. I need to come into the left for the right-hander. You know, I'm probably approaching position 1. I'm not looking down at it, I'm just sensing it. I come away a little bit because of that junction. Another one there, but I need to be in because of the bend. And off the gas. I'm going to reduce my speed, look for the gap. See, I'm right in position 1 here. That's your anticipation. You know, we could have met him on the bend. Someone was recently telling me what a good idea it is to go around a right-hand bend and a left-hand bend in what essentially is the offside position. Don't think so. Different if I can see it's clear, might consider it. Might have maximum safe space left and right. But on these sort of roads, especially this time of year where there's very few cross views through the greenery, I mean there are some but they're not vast. So one thing we must mention is a technique called offsiding. And I'm going to mention it because if you've been watching any form of advanced motorcycle training videos, you will often see police motorcyclists or other motorcyclists at advanced level often using the other side of the road just to negotiate left-hand bends. So that practice of doing that is an emergency services practice. It's been used for years, but it tends to be a little bit frowned on these days in the non-emergency service world because of the high risks attached to it. The reason it is done is to increase the view around the left-hand bend. It generally creates a smoother line which keeps the motorcycle more stable, and of course it enables more speed. It's not to be done by people who haven't got the appropriate levels of observation or training because the risk behind it is ridiculously high. Apart from the obvious of being involved in a collision, if you get things wrong, you're looking at being prosecuted for careless, possibly dangerous, but more likely careless driving. But when we start analysing things, as perhaps we should do, and thinking about things in detail at advanced level, let's look at whether we can in fact offside. It's one of those areas out there that's going to remain controversial, and I'm not saying you should, and I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, because there's also matters of degrees. Some people take it to a very extreme degree. There we go, I've just offsided. I've just pinched about a foot of the other side of the road to straighten out that bend. Have I affected another road user? Have I broken the law? No, not at all. So in that respect, what's the problem with that? So I think before we start saying you must not do that, that is dangerous, let's look at manners of degree. It can also worry or concern other road users if they see it. That's where we use the mnemonic SLAP, safe, legal, does it achieve anything, and what's other road users' perception. If we approach a blind bend and stick ourselves on the wrong side of the road, ridiculous. Of course it's driving without due care and attention. It's like here, I wouldn't do it. I can't see enough over the greenery. I'm position 5-ish, position 4-ish. I'm going to come back in now to improve the view. So it's like now, I've got a left-hander. There's no way you can come out on the wrong side of the road, is there? It's blatantly obvious, I would hope. Don't like the word obvious in training, but it really should be, shouldn't it? So you will have the two camps of people that say you must not do it at all, and you'll have the other camp of person that says, well, you can do it. It's been trained for years, nothing wrong with it. So one of the examples I was given many years ago by an advanced examiner is, do you use the opposite carriageway, the other side of the road, to overtake a vehicle? If it's safe? Of course the answer is yes, of course you do. So his argument was, if that is the case, if it is safe to do it for an overtake, why is it not safe to do it just to gain a better view and to iron the road out and get a smoother line? because you're not going to overtake if it's unsafe, in the same way that you shouldn't iron a bend out if it's unsafe. And I can see the logic, but I can also see the logic that if someone is not trained to a high standard, is not paying attention, doesn't have good observational skills, the recipe for having a collision is high, in the same way as it is for overtaking. The other thing is, generally speaking, at the speeds we travel as non-emergency riders, does it ever have a necessity? And to be honest, it's very unlikely that it does. So whilst offsiding is a particular technique, it also calls into the question of straight lining right-hand bends to get a smoother, straighter line. So it's very similar, and the principles are the same, in as much as if you're on the other side of the road, what are the risk levels? And is it necessary? So as I've said, matters of degree, and it all depends on the vision that you have. So whilst I won't advocate that you must or you should offside or iron out right hand bends, I'm also going to say there's a time and a place for everything, and I will, where safe and appropriate, use those techniques. So with these right hand bends, I hold a safe position. When I see the view break and my exit to the bend, I can then decide what line I take. So like here, we can come across to the white line. Got one here. Have I got a view? So there, I can quite happily iron that out, and also almost offside for the left-hander. It's like here, I could iron that one out, but there's absolutely no need to go across the white line to smooth that bend at all because of the width of the lane. So we'll just look at this section of road again, going the other direction, and let's see. So, can I pinch a little bit? Yeah, I can pinch a little bit. So for the right-hander, can I straighten the bend? Well, the view's not there at the moment, so no. There's the view. Now I can straighten the bend. Not going to straighten it here because there's a junction to the right. So whilst I'm in an offside position within my lane, I am not offsiding for this left-hand bend, especially as I've got junctions to the offside as well. There's something to consider. We can see a wide vehicle coming towards us there, so we're just going to moderate our position, which means we moderate our speed. You can see he's actually over the white line. Can't straighten that one because of the oncoming vehicle. And we've got a left-hander coming up, so would I offside? No, there's no view. It's blind, isn't it, at this point? I mean, the view's opening up. I'm okay on a position 5 or an offside if you like, because I've got enough room to come back in. I can see a little bit across there. I have got some dead ground. Smooth this one out a fraction, but I'm not prepared to go on the other side of the road. It's not necessary and the view's not great. Let's have a flexible gear for a left into a right. Can I straighten the bend? Only when the view's there. There's the view. So yeah, I can straighten it there. Being aware of the crossroads. Large vehicle, moderating position for that. That's why you hold that position on a right hand bend towards the left until the view breaks and don't come out early. It's like here, I'm holding a semi-offside position, got the warning, but I've got such a lovely view of the road ahead, it's not a problem. Now as the view starts to restrict, I will come back in, and quite rightly so, but I came back in early enough. It wasn't upsetting to the van driver, I wasn't panicked, no drama. It's like here, what's wrong with a little bit of offsiding to open that view up? But as the view doesn't open enough, I'm coming back in. And it gave me quite a nice line as well, actually. It was relatively smooth. But please, with the offsiding, don't think I'm saying you must do it, because I'm not saying you must do it. So following position, something to consider. Let's keep well back from this vehicle. I'm on a 60-mile-an-hour road, national speed limit. I want to keep well back. I haven't really got much of an escape route ahead, but what if a car comes up close behind me and fast, doesn't see me? I'm tail end here at the moment. I'm not too close to a bend, fortunately. That would make it worse. So I've bought myself loads of space to go into if I need to. Here we go, he comes up really quickly, a little flash of the brake light. Lovely, slowed him down beautifully. And I've got somewhere to go, and that's the important thing. You know, he was tramping down there a little bit. The problem with being too close to the vehicle in front and then the traffic starts to slow is you get this catch-up effect. So you end up slamming the anchors on, the vehicle behind you ends up slamming the anchors on at the last moment, and you're very likely to get hit up the rear end. So with your following position, space is good. Space is good, period, on a motorcycle, isn't it? I know you can't solve every single problem on the road by your own skill and ability, but you can really go a long way to protecting yourself. A lot of it is absolutely within your hands. So we've got the warning of the staggered junction. I'm just going to ease off a little bit, increase the space from the vehicle in front, flexible gear. Now, road positioning, I'm right out in the middle here, equidistant from the hazards, away from that one. Consider getting more away from that one. It's not rocket science, it really isn't. Some people say it's confusing. We all work in different ways, we all understand things differently, we all learn things differently sometimes. That's why these videos are not exclusively brilliant. But training with an instructor is a lot better very often because, as we've already said, we can discuss things, and if you say I don't understand that, then the instructor should explain it in a different way, and he should go on to investigate ways of explanation until you do get it and you do understand it. Well, I hope this video has been of use to some of you. The main thing to remember is that if you're a new and inexperienced motorcyclist, there's a lot more out there to learn, not least with road positioning. And of course, just to reiterate, road positioning depends very, very much on good observational skills, getting as much of the picture in as you can, also allowing for what you can't see and what you can expect to happen, always expecting the worst to happen, of course, and preserving your safety to the highest degree. If you are inexperienced and you're still thinking a lot about simple tasks like braking and changing gear, or you're very new to the road, then some of these advanced positions are not for you. And that's not being rude or disrespectful, it's just that you can get yourself in trouble if you fail to assess the whole picture sufficiently. Videos such as this cannot train you for every situation. And the reason I've done this video is more of an awareness, it's a talking point and an awareness of road positioning. And if you wish to enhance your road positioning, I would suggest that working with an instructor from any of the advanced or post-test training organisations is definitely worth it, because you get the opportunity to see, demonstrate your own abilities, to see the ride of the instructor, to have decent conversations, two-way conversations, and if you don't understand anything, it can be clarified for you, and that way you can only get better and better. So until next time, ride safe and take care.